Good morning and welcome to the Chapter 3 TED Talk over the skeletal system, presented by Nazir A. Vasquez. There are five basic functions of the bones. First, to support, the spine provides support for posture and the legs provide support for movement and standing. Then protection, the cranial bones protect the brain and the ribs protect all visceral organs. Then there's movement, which operates in conjunction with muscles um, to allow the movement to happen. There's also storage. The bone functions storage with containing the necessary minerals, for example, calcium. Um, then there's hemopoiesis, which is basically saying that's where blood is made, because we find out in the book that blood is mainly formed in red bone marrow. There are also two divisions of the skeleton. The two main divisions are the axial, which includes all the bones of the skull, the hyoid bone, the thorax, and the spine. And then there's the appendicular skeletal system, which is the bones of the upper extremities, the pectoral girdle, bones of the lower extremities, the pelvic girdle. And additionally, there are also two other types of bones: sutural, which are chip-like bone fragments often found between the cranial bones, and sesamoid, which are small bones that are usually found in tendons and places where pressure is highest. In this particular diagram, I took out the time kind of to just label about 20 or so of the bones that we have here in the skull. The first of those is the parietal bone, which you'll find about right here. The temporal bone, which is about right here. The lambdoidal suture, which is this little line right about here. The occipital bone, which you would find in this lower portion. The external auditory canal is right there. The mastoid process of the temporal bone, which would be this little piece right here. The mandibular angle, which would be about right here. The mental foramen, there's a little dot right here. You can't see it, but there's a dot right there for the mental foramen. And then you have the mandible, which would be about right here. Then you have your zygomatic bone, which is this bone right up in here. The lacrimal bone, which would take up about this whole bone in this area. Also, you have the nasal bone, which is a small bone right in here. I mean, the lacrimal bone is right here. The nasal bone is right here where your nose would be. Your ethmoid bone is right in here near the eye socket. Your sphenoid bone, which is basically in the same spot that your temple is. Your frontal bone, which is this entire bone right here, as well as your coronal suture, which is this little line right here. And back here to your condyloid process, which you can find in this little area here, as well as the squamous suture, which extends right here, as well as your coronoid process, which sits right here up under your zygomatic bone. Our book tells us that the skull is divided within three subcategories: the cranium, the face, and the ear bones. The cranium includes 8 bones: the frontal bones, the parietal bones, the temporal bones, the occipital bone, the sphenoid bone, and the ethmoid bone. The face has 14 bones, which includes the nasal bones, the lacrimal bones, the vomer bone, the zygomatic bone, the palatine bones, the maxillary bones, the mandible, and the inferior nasal concha. Then there's the ear bones, which include the auditory ossicles, the malleus, which is hammer-shaped, the incus, which is anvil-shaped, and the stapes, which are stirrup-shaped. Within the axioskeleton, there's also a couple of additional bones. These bones are the hyoid bone, which is primarily independent, but it's located slightly above the voice box. Then there's 26 vertebrae. The upper 7 are known as the cervical vertebrae, which is C1 through C7. You hear those commonly mentioned as that. Then the next 12 are known as the thoracic vertebrae, which would be T1 through T12. The next 5 would be known as the lumbar vertebrae, L1 through L5. And the last 2 bones would be the sacrum and the coccyx. And the coccyx we know is our tailbone. Then there's 24 ribs, and the upper 7 are known as true ribs, and the bottom 5 are known as the false ribs. And we also have the sternum, which we know to be our breastbone. Then we have the appendicular skeleton. And it goes without saying that pretty much the appendicular skeleton is everything that the axial skeleton is not. And it contains 126 bones, which include all of the bones from the extremities, which is your arms and your legs. The appendicular skeleton includes the pectoral girdle, which includes your shoulder blades, your scapulae, or your clavicles, which we know to be the collarbones. The arm includes the humerus, which is the upper bone in the arm, the ulna, which is the lower bone in the arm, which forms right about the elbow. The metacarpals are the bones just past the wrist in the hand. You have your phalanges, which we know to be our fingers. The pelvic girdle includes the os coxa, which we call the hip bones. Our legs, the bone in the upper leg is known as the femur. The patella, which we know to be our kneecap. The tibia, which is the bone that makes up our shin. The fibular bone, which is the lateral bone, or the fibula, the lateral bone in the lower leg. The tarsals, just like the metacarpals in the hand, are in the foot as well, which are the bones that form at the ankle area, and the phalanges of the foot, which are the toes. And this has been your TED Talk over the skeletal system.